I have a lot of plugins. You probably have a lot of plugins. I want more plugins. You probably want more plugins. But which ones out of the ones we have are actually worth using and which ones are actually worth getting? Well, I sat down and figured out the 5 most used plugins for me personally mixing this year in 2024, and I'm going to tell you what they are and why. Let's go. Yo, what's good, guys? Inswain with Inswain Audio. Welcome back. If you're new, subscribe and stick around because I drop videos every single day. You're not going to want to miss out. Anyways, let's get right into these plugins. Okay, so first up on the list has to be, it's a classic. This is the FabFilter Pro Q3 Parametric EQ. You probably have it. If not, I'm sure you've heard of it. I use this on literally every single song that I mixed all year. At the very least, I use it on the vocals for my cleanup EQ, my, earlier on in the chain subtractive EQ. I use it for other things as well, but this is like a given. This is my go-to for that. Yeah, I like to use other, more analog-y emulated EQs for boosting on my vocals, but for the cleanup, I'm always going to the Pro Q3. The dynamic feature is nice, and it's just ease of use, and the way it looks is what really draws me in. Okay, but now that the obvious is out of the way, one that's a little bit more underground, but I use on almost every vocal. The only time I won't is if the vocal was recorded with compression on it, and I can tell. But if it wasn't recorded with a compression or there wasn't enough where I notice, I'm using this on every single vocal, and that is the Soft Tube Tech CL1B Mark II edition. I like more, and that's this one right here. You can see it's modeled after a CL1B. And the reason that I use this on every vocal is because there's a famous vocal chain where, this is part of it, where in the analog domain, you're recording with an analog physical compressor, and this is the one that's part of that, quote unquote famous chain. You don't have to do this chain. I just like the way it sounds. So I like to kind of pre-mixing, I like to simulate this chain digitally if I know that it wasn't recorded that way analog. So I'll put this compressor on right early in the chain, really before I start actually mixing, and just do some slight compression. I like to do my attack at 12, my release at 2, and get at max like 5 dBs of gain reduction. This is a trick that I learned from Tizio, who mixes for Chris Brown, etc. He likes to do this in the physical domain before, it hits the DAW while recording. So I like to simulate it in my DAW if I know that the vocal wasn't recorded that way. I'm doing this for pretty much every genre. Sometimes I might compress a little less, maybe a little bit more. But like I said, as long as you're not doing more than 5 dBs, that's where I like it personally, especially with the plugin. I actually just got my own analog CL1B emulation, and I find that you can push those a little bit harder before they sound obvious, or you can hear the compression, as opposed to the plugin. You have to go a little bit easier on it so that it's transparent, but this plugin is super transparent, and it sounds really good. And it just kind of levels out the vocal before you even start mixing it. So you kind of set yourself up for an easier job. But that's what I like to use it for. And like I said, I'm using it on literally every single vocal unless it comes to me already insanely compressed, which is like maybe one song in the past year. Next up, an absolute staple, that is Antares Autotune Pro. Don't really need to say much about it. We know what Autotune is, why we use it. I specifically use Autotune Pro. There's other versions, there's other brands. Same thing. But yeah, tuning plugin I'm using on pretty much every single vocal. The only time I'm not using it is if they specifically say they don't want tuning, or it comes to me already tuned, which is more common, or if it's just a song that just really wants to sound natural and wants no tuning. Now, even given that, there's some songs that sound natural that I'll still tune, more subtly and naturally, but sometimes they really do just sound better without any tuning at all, but that's extremely rare. 99% of songs, I'm tuning, or they're coming to me tuned already. All right, back to some sleepers. We got the KEVE X Stressor. It's through Plugin Alliance, but the brand is KEVE. It's confusing. But yeah, it's the KEVE X Stressor. It is a distressor compressor emulation. It's a mouthful. These compressors are known as workhorses. They're known to sound good on really anything. They can be subtle, they can be extreme, they can add color, they can kind of do it all. Fast attack, slow attack, fast release, slow release, right? They do it all. For me, I always say I use it on almost every vocal, but thinking back, I don't think there was a single vocal in all of 2024 that I didn't use it on. So I think now I can say that I use this on every single vocal. How I use it is in parallel. It's not just for that, but for some reason, for me personally, this specific plugin as a parallel compressor, especially when combined with the 2 different saturation modes, it's it sounds perfect. Like every single time I use it, it sounds absolutely amazing. It had so much character and body and saturation, and it just works so well in parallel. I haven't had a song yet that it didn't work on. And last but not least, another kind of low-key sleeper, and that is the Krog True Iron. This is a saturation plugin. I'm using it on almost every single vocal. I use it for other things sometimes, but really on vocals, this right here is a gem. It's more of subtle saturation. It can be pushed, but to me, it sounds really good on like 0.1, very subtle. It just adds a little bit of transformery, tubey, you know, that type of saturation, just a very subtle amount that isn't really like an obvious effect, but it just brings your vocal to life and makes it sound real and not so digitally, and it makes it stand out in the mix and gives it some nice character. Yeah, those are a lot of words. It's a big, you know, claim for a plugin that I'm using so subtly, but really it is that last little 1% that's going to push you across the finish line. This one right here, I'm using once again on 99% of my vocals. So there you have it, guys. Those are the 5 most used plugins for me personally in terms of mixing. I'm going to be dropping tomorrow, guess what, the top 5 most used mastering plugins. So make sure to stick around and subscribe for that. Throw the video a like if you liked it. I'd appreciate it. Anyways, guys, I'll see y'all tomorrow, man. It's Swain with Swain Audio. Peace.